Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. My guest today is Matt Lewis. He is the Chief Artificial and Augmented Intelligence Officer at Inizio Medical, and we talk about the pace of technology and AI in medical affairs. So this is kind of a part two of a prior conversation we had. It's really interesting. I hope you guys enjoy it. Don't forget to follow me on LinkedIn and check us out for MSL Talk Live, which is once a month, and that's on the LinkedIn platform. So we hope to see you there as well. Thank you, as always, for your support of this podcast. Welcome to MSL Talk with Tom Caravela, a podcast specifically designed for MSLs and all things field medical. Hey, Matt, welcome back to the podcast. How you doing?
Good, Tom. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Guys, I'm excited. Matt is, he's a regular. He's been on the show before, and I know Matt for a while. He is the expert in technology and AI, especially as it relates to medical affairs. So this is kind of a part two. I'll explain what that means in a second. And it's important to have this conversation. But before we do that, Matt, why don't you introduce who you are, tell everybody where you're from, all that good stuff.
Sure. Again, hi to all the listeners. Thanks for taking the time to listen to Tom's program. I've been a long-time listener and now a frequent guest, and appreciate the time that everyone's spending with us. My name is Matt Lewis. I lead the artificial augmented intelligence function at Inizio Medical. 23 years ago, I started in medical affairs as a field-based medical science liaison. Worked mostly in the New York, New Jersey area in that role. Have every kind of in-house role in medical affairs you can have before transitioning onto the consulting and agency side for a number of years, leading advanced analytics, and now more recently artificial intelligence for a number of years as well. And just looking forward to diving in.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We got some good stuff to talk about. Before we do that, I just want to announce this episode is sponsored by Fierce Life Sciences. So if you guys are familiar, I've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks. Mass East is coming up. It's one of my favorite conferences each year. You should definitely check it out. It's basically the ultimate event for medical affairs, medical communications, field medical leaders. It's a great way to connect with medical affairs professionals across all of pharma for 3 days of focused learning, and just awesome conversations. So elevate your expertise at the Fierce Medical Affairs Strategic Summit East. It's in Jersey City this year, and that's May 6th through the 8th. Listeners of the MSL Talk podcast can get 25% off their registration by using the code MSL Talk, no space. So it's MSLTALK, and you would need to go to medaffairssummit.com. And again, we will see you at Mass East in May, and that's in Jersey City, New Jersey. So Matt, the reason I said this is a part two is because Matt and I talked recently. He came on last year, and we talked about the effect of artificial intelligence and technology in medical affairs for like looking out to 2030. The question is, and a lot of people have asked me, well, what about now? Like, what is going on in 2024? What do we expect in the next year as it relates to technology and specifically artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, that is the question. I mean, I think, last year was kind of like a year of like, wow, like this is amazing, like cool. Now it's kind of like more not so much wow, although there is some wow out there depending upon like what you read and what you see, but more how, not so much wow, but how. And it's no more apparent about how than in field medical or in medical affairs broadly, because when you think of the number of people doing the work and where resources are supported, and people are trying to say like, okay, well, if this is going to be important for us and important for the work we do, like what do we actually do about it? How does it change our day to day? And I think it's really been like a long time coming, so to speak. I was talking with a colleague recently about kind of what the world was like when I was in MSL 23 years ago, and it has changed so much in that period of time. But like when I was in MSL back in the early 2000s, we didn't even have GPS. Like there was no way to do Apple Maps or Waze or whatever you use for getting around. I like literally had Hagstrom's atlases. Remember those?
Yeah.
In my car that I would like mark up with markers and try to figure out how to get from one opinion leader's office to another in Brooklyn and Queens and Manhattan and upstate New York and whatnot. And I have no sense of direction, so those things were my go-to, if you will. But now technology has democratized access to location like it has for so much else. And it used to be that like different types and aspects of tech and digital were like something that the IT department kind of decided what was relevant for you as an MSL. But now it's becoming that each individual person, each individual field medical kind of professional can really kind of take a responsibility for and determine how they want to kind of dip in or not for making themselves more efficient, more effective, to enjoy the work perhaps a little bit more. Both because like you don't have to have a doctoral degree in machine learning or data science to use AI as an MSL. A lot of platforms and applications are available like right directly. And also because it's not like something that sits just with one group like an IT or a tech department. It is something that everyone does. It's like not like like a project. Someone's like running the this digital project over there in the corner. It's something that really everyone kind of has access to. So it's everyone's kind of responsibility, not just like one little thing.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because I think that's one of the things people are curious about, including me. So in 2024, as we look at where we are now versus last year, can you give us some practical applications? So what can MSLs be doing with AI and technology as a user like just in their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I mean, there was a recent survey looking at just use of artificial intelligence platforms broadly, not just in medical affairs or life sciences, but just out in the world, like say like in the US, for example. And it suggested that about 3/5 of Americans are actually using things like ChatGPT or Google's
Mhm.
Gemini or things like that, which suggests that about 40% of people are not using or have never used generative artificial intelligence at all for any purpose, which to me is shocking. Now, granted, I'm a chief AI officer, so the idea that people haven't used generative is unbelievable and amazing to me. But I get it. There are people that are still like, okay, no, this isn't yet kind of like something that's relevant that I want to do. But I sometimes like we're quick to suggest that teams and individuals and roles focus on applications that are specific to their function, like things that are relevant for medical liaisons, if you will. And that's definitely relevant and great. But I would say that a lot of people need to start not by thinking about like a tool or technology or an application, but really thinking about like the things in their life, whether it is their professional life, their role, their medical liaison role, or whatever they're doing, and thinking about the things that they want to achieve in this quarter, this year, what's on their plan, their professional development plan, their objectives, and how much of the things that they want to achieve they feel like they can do on their own versus what can potentially be improved with AI. And then, maybe they don't know what that looks like. They know kind of, they want to, be able to have more productive scientific exchange. They want to be able to read more about a specific part of the scientific corpus that they're responsible for. They want to go to more conferences and have more interactive and enjoyable meetings with opinion leaders and patient advocates, whatever might be the case. And how are they going to figure out like what of those things can be improved with AI? Like, there's a lot of coursework now that is freely available on the web that people can access directly and in a short amount of time understand what are the targets, what are the areas that can be improved directly with AI and what can't. And not everything can, but there's a lot that can be improved directly. Things that can summarize long form PDFs and text into quick bullets and quick, for a few sentences versus having to read 16-page articles, if you will, and give tables and responses back that in a few minutes can do what otherwise would take an hour. Things that interpret large amounts of information and understand the patterns and the insights that emerge from it. So there's a lot that can be done, but the way that it started is really by figuring out what is relevant to you and to your work, if you will, and then once those challenges have been identified, to then kind of figure out what tool makes the most sense for that person. And it's going to be different for everyone. If you work at a large company like Genentech and there's hundreds of field medical liaisons versus you work at a small biotech and there's only a team of 8, the resources and the investment in each person's role are going to be very different. And one's not good, the other's not bad. It's just different. And you have to think about like how to apply the same or different technologies for problems that exist across those organizations, and try to kind of align the tech to the problem, not just willy-nilly pick something off the shelf just because it's like sexy and it looks cool.
Right. Yeah. It's almost like I kind of look at it. First of all, I love the example of like, how it summarizes information, because we're all in that situation where like, man, I wish I had somebody to break this down for me. So AI does that. The other thing it does, and the way I use it and look at it as an assistant, it's like a virtual assistant in a sense. Yeah. So if you're in, I don't know, any type of business situation, or there's an application or something that you need to do, instead of saying, oh man, how am I going to figure this out? Just put a prompt in ChatGPT and see if you can get some kind of direction. I'll give you an example. This is a really stupid example, but just to show you, like, if the holidays are here and you have like this, grab bag thing that you're involved in, and you don't know what gift to get your coworker that's under $30, that's $30 or less. You ask ChatGPT, I need to get a gift for my coworker who's this age and is into these things, and the gift has to be $30 or less.
Yeah.
And I live in northern New Jersey. What would be some ideas? Like, I know how crazy that sounds,
yeah,
but if you think about the practical, like, am I being crazy?
No, not at all. I mean, I would certainly never call anyone crazy for any reason, but I think that's not crazy at all. But I think the other thing is that I think it is really true that all people, all humans everywhere are kind of like conditioned, like over, evolution and over time, to like just get used to dealing with problems and dealing with like taking a long time to make decisions, because generally speaking, like we've been brought up to just like grin and bear it and like deal with things and get through it and just not complain and just like get on with it and get on with our lives. Because for the most part, up until very recently, there really wasn't anything you could do about it. Like if you had like something that, like use your example, if you had to find like a $30 under gift for your colleague, like who are you going to call really? Who are you going to tell to do that? There wasn't anyone you could really do. But, ChatGPT or, Gemini, the two major models for this type of work in generative, it's almost like asking every single person that's ever lived on planet Earth, that's ever had that problem, about what that could look like for you, and getting a response, all possible responses in that period of time, and getting a decision then in seconds, versus not knowing what to do and spending hours potentially with the wrong answer. And it's like that with every possible challenge you could face. So, I now, it's like almost more like remembering to remind myself, right? Reminding to remind myself that if I'm struggling, if I have any type of kind of like inefficiency or friction, or just like it just takes longer than it should take, that I should default back to generative AI than to what I had been doing, because you just get stuck in your ways. You're like so used to doing it the old-fashioned way that you forget, oh, like there's a better way to do it. Like a great example is, for many years, my default for doing scientific research is a mix of Google Scholar and PubMed. And I've been in that space for over a decade, probably 15 years. Like I would go into Google Scholar and or PubMed and do research. And then once I found what I was interested in, I would read the articles, I would summarize them, do my slide development, all the rest. And it takes time to do that. It's not the easiest thing, both finding articles, finding full text, and all the rest. There are other tools that now, from a generative perspective, do both the initial research and also the insight and interpretation work in generative. But my mental model is such that I kind of go to Google Search or Google Scholar and go to PubMed first by default because I've been doing it for over a decade, and I forget to go to the other platforms because I have been doing others for so long. Even though generative is much more efficient and more effective, and when I do it that way, I produce better results that are richer and better for my audiences. And now I've actually, over the last 6 months, 9 months, developed a new process which actually has about 14 different individual generative platforms in close succession, like one after the next. That even though it sounds like a lot, 14 versus 2, I do that whole process in about 1/5 the time that it used to take me to do 2, and I get much better results than what I had gotten before. And as a result, I'm much happier. I have much more time to do other things. And the people that I'm speaking to, which are, audiences of medical affairs professionals, find that it's valuable for them. So it's like it's a change in the way that I have to think, that I'm not in my old fashioned kind of ways of working. And I have to kind of just force myself to find generative applications that actually make me work faster, more efficiently, better, smarter. And as a result, I get better outputs.
Totally. Yeah. And you wind up with so much more efficiency because you're getting help. And think about, and I'm going to go back to that scenario I just mentioned. You get the gift idea from generative, whether it's Gemini or I use ChatGPT. And then you get that idea. Then you go to Amazon and you order it. And the next day you have it. So here's this problem that you had. You didn't know how to solve it. And in 24 hours, you basically have the gift in your hand. So let's move on from that and talk about companies. So what should companies same question. So how do companies use AI right now for their MSL teams, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it actually is a similar consideration for companies, in that companies also should probably not start by like just throwing tech at teams, if you will, which,
Mhm.
some companies do that. I've seen it, but they probably shouldn't do it for a lot of reasons. One, like, we have finite resources, so if they spend, tech dollars on things that aren't actually problems worth solving, that's money they could have been spending on other things, and we're still in a tight economy and all the rest. So why do that? But beyond that, I mean, if the teams that are involved with the projects, whether they're experiments or POCs or pilots, don't know kind of how to use the platforms or how they'll change their work processes, their roles, their responsibilities once the tech is stood up, then most times, even if the tech itself works, it won't work in the company. And there's an oft-cited figure in the artificial intelligence space that 9 out of 10 AI projects in large companies fail. And that is true, but it's true primarily because not because the tech doesn't work, because the AI doesn't work. It's largely true because either, like, you try to go into a big company or any company and you implement AI, and like the VP of medical affairs is like focused on something else completely and is not involved whatsoever in that initiative, and their direct reports, the people that run that function or the lead field medical, for example, get the impression that it doesn't matter to them. And then while it's funded financially, it's not strategically aligned, and they spend their time and efforts elsewhere. And as a result, even though the project's happening, no one supports it, and it dies on the vine.
It never gets implemented, is what you're saying.
It gets implemented, but almost like as a box checking exercise. Like, they did it, but no one adopts it, no one engages with it. They'll spend the money, but then it doesn't actually get used. Or like they'll stand it up and they won't support it from like a socialization or a training perspective, like that exists within the business, but they don't tell anyone what it is or how to use it. So they'll support it and say this is really important to us, but they won't actually spend the time to help people recognize, hey, the old way was to use your slides and Google Scholar. Now the new way is to use this generative platform, and here's what's going to be different about your role and the opinion leader's role and our CRM and this other thing. And if you don't do the time to help people understand what's different in their minds and in their skills, they're not just going to know what to do. And
Yeah.
people are creatures of habit, just like I was saying before. So they'll do what they did before instead of doing the new thing. And then you spend, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars standing up a new platform that no one uses, not because it doesn't work, but because no one was trained on it or they don't know how to use it when they're actually in their role. And then it again dies on the vine. And we see this a lot.
Well,
Um,
it's like people don't seem to want to embrace technology. It's like when you know you have your iPhone and you find out that you have to update it, you're like, oh, I got to update my phone. First of all, it's going to take forever, and I don't want to be, God forbid, my phone's not in my pocket, got in my hand for, and I have to wait 30 seconds, right? And then after you get through the whole download thing, you don't know what the new version's going to look like, what's moved around, what's changed. Do you think is it the apprehension of?
yeah, there is definitely some of that for sure. It's like it's a natural thing for people to kind of have that like technology adoption kind of resistance or hesitancy.
Mhm.
In generative, it's even worse than that because people have that like underlying concern also that if it does work, if they do adopt it, that maybe it'll work too well and it'll take their job. And
Mm,
I hear this all the time. Like it's a little bit less in 2024 than it was in 2023,
mhm.
but easily in 2023, like 9 times out of 10, maybe now it's 4 times out of 10, I'll present to an audience and someone will raise their hand saying, if this does work, are robots slash AI going to take my job? And it's that question could be like its own podcast,
Yeah.
but it's not logical, the question and the answer. It's really like when someone says that, they're really almost asking like, am I still going to have meaning? Am I still going to count in the world that follows, if you will? And like I can't answer that for them. That's like between them and something else perhaps, but that there's no real risk of that happening in our environment, but it is a frequent reason why people won't engage with AI because they're fearful that if they do and it works too well, that they'll be laid off or their
Mm,
position won't exist. So it's almost now like we've come from a place where I didn't even have GPS when I was an MSL to now it works so well that I won't have a job if I use it. And how do you kind of thread that needle? It becomes very difficult. The other thing, though, that's different now is that generative AI and AI in general is the reason why the stock market in the US is doing so well and why the economy is not doing worse than it otherwise would be. The AI is the biggest contributor to gains broadly in the economy right now in the US. And beyond that, AI is the most frequent discussed topic at board meetings and within the C suite, within companies in the US as a positive contributor to growth for all large enterprises. So unlike in past years when you would talk about like, analytics or insights or other things that field medical and medical science liaisons and medical affairs cares about, and they still care about, generative AI has kind of staying power and has power at the board level across big business, across all of industry, across society. And you're going to start seeing it's already happening within some companies that investors and stakeholders, shareholders, and executives are calling for most large organizations to have an artificial intelligence strategy and to adopt artificial intelligence platforms in their major lines of business, like field medical is for life sciences. And if an organization chooses on their own not to do that, it's likely that someone senior within the business, like a VP of medical affairs, a chief medical officer, that type of thing, will come back to the business and say, yeah, this plan for commercializing this asset or fielding this team or whatever this looks like looks great, but where's your AI plan?
mm.
That would not have happened 3 years ago, 8 years ago, 22 years ago when I was an MSL. That is the difference between generative AI and all previous technology. It is now a business imperative.
Yeah, it's a thing, and it's just a matter of how it's adopted and initiated and implemented, and to what extent and how quickly. So let me ask you this then: when as we look at some of the initiatives, let's call it, or projects, like what types of projects are you seeing rolled out right now, technical and AI type projects, with some of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, there's really kind of like 3 or 4-ish things that companies are doing. It depends again on size and stage and complexity and the breadth and depth of the portfolio and pipeline and that type of thing. But generally speaking, it's like something like this. Many organizations, those that are more progressive and becoming more kind of mature from a digital or technology perspective, are looking to experiment and engage their early adopters, the people in their business that want to embrace technology, excuse me, and to figure out kind of what it means for them, what problems they wanted to solve. And they work with a firm like ours, like Inizio Medical, to help kind of figure out what are those use cases that are worth solving for and what problems they can kind of fix, if you will,
Mhm.
by doing early stage experiments or proofs of concept that can actually be improved. And then once they work, they scale them. And once they don't work, they deprecate them, they just kill them. So
Mm.
like there are things like, for example, like, they have a lot of content within the organization that needs to be put into the format that someone can glean insights from and summarize. Historically, that would all be done by hand, manually. The references, the citations, the evidence would all be annotated by hand. Now it can all be done by machine learning, a part of the AI spectrum, deep learning, also artificial intelligence, and natural language processing, also AI. And with a generative AI component, new content can be generated from that summarization in the form of things like infographics or summaries or animations or audio files or other kind of quick media assets that someone can ingest or use with an opinion leader. So those are quick wins that can be easily demonstrated within the organization within a quarter, if you will. Then a number of organizations, probably I'd say at least a quarter to a half of the large pharmaceutical organizations that are out there, have stood up their own internal GPT. So you talked about ChatGPT. Most mid-sized, bigger companies have a version of that within their own walls, that they brand as something internal, like a X GPT, X being the company's name, if you will. But it's essentially like a ChatGPT that has the company content into it, if you will, and it has very defined use cases. So it can't do everything like find your colleague's $30 handbag. It can't do that, but it can potentially take medical information that you presented at ASCO in the form of a poster and rewrite another version for an encore poster coming up at ESMO 3 months later. And then instead of having to use a medical writer, either in-house or external, to do that, now it was just done for you using your XGPT internal. It can't, for example, have a conversation with an opinion leader. You still need an MSL to leverage their expertise and their contextual experience to do that. But it can do some very narrowly defined use cases. Most of large and specialty pharma now have an internal GPT to do that.
That's pretty cool. That's really cool. So I actually didn't realize that. So companies are almost white labeling into an extent or branding the AI, let's say ChatGPT, for their own purposes with a certain set of data, certain information. So if it's a medical affairs department, it's like, okay, this is our own version and it includes this information, and it's going to make it so much easier for us to produce all of this production out of whatever it is, whether it's um, materials or stuff for conferences or KOL engagement and interactions, territory plans. But so out of curiosity, what are they using? How are they developing that? Are they developing that off of ChatGPT?
Usually, yes. Some organizations will partner with another firm, like say Google or Amazon or OpenAI, another organization. But a lot of it is with OpenAI and Microsoft through the Azure cloud interface, usually with a partner like us or another organization.
Mm.
But it's not as broad or as kind of extensive as you might think. It's not like it can't act as like an everything app like ChatGPT is. It's
Yeah,
a very ring fenced, very kind of constrained on a couple of
specific.
defined use cases. It's kind of a truism in generative that if you want to do like one or two things very well
Yeah.
and like never hallucinate, for example, you don't want to have inaccurate answers like when you come up with a new
Yep.
post for ESMO. You can do that, but if you do that, it's at the trade-off of not being able to do lots of other things. So when you constrain it by saying we really want to have great encore posters for ESMO, then the trade-off is you can't do 25 other use cases, because to get the model to be really great at one or two things, it means it sucks at everything else.
Mm.
Like it's really good for those things, and then the organization sees, wow, this is amazing at these things, and it gets kind of a comfort about what else might be possible in the future using AI for other areas of consideration, which is really, that's the point. It's building that confidence, building that kind of self-efficacy, if you will, of what's
Yeah.
the future looks like. And that's where kind of growth comes. And then typically where groups go from there is they start to think, well, okay, well, if these things that had a lot of like friction and challenge to them before that, like it shouldn't really be that hard to take like a poster that we presented at ASCO in Chicago to ESMO in Stockholm or Madrid. How hard should that really be? Now we did that with AI. What else can we do? And then they'll
Mm.
start thinking, like 60% of our resource goes to field medical. What can we do within field medical that's always been challenging? And there are a number of things that we could have a chat about that this group that's listening right now probably is already thinking about that have always proven problematic within field medical that stand up quite well to the test of, are these things that would be augmented or enhanced or optimized by generative artificial intelligence that in concert with a really capable human together could be magic. And I can list 15 of those use cases right off the top of my head, just because when I was an MSL 23 years ago, I used to hit my head against the wall trying to do those things manually. And many people that are listening probably still do the same thing because there haven't been real improvements in the space in a generation.
It's awesome. I mean, you put it in such great perspective. So from what I'm hearing, there's some things that are just happening. So it's just happening. It's being adopted and incorporated into our day-to-day lives, whether we realize it's AI or not. And I think that's part of the thing is people are like, oh, like at some point, it's like AI is just going to be its own thing. We're not going to call it AI. It's going to just, there's going to be efficiencies that are built in through use of AI, but it's not going to be called AI. It's just going to be part of whatever it is. So, for
Yeah.
example, you have a new, program, a new application, you have a new app, something that you're using for, we'll use the Congress example. So there's for Congresses, okay, we're going to use this new tool for Congresses. No one's going to know how it was created and what
Yeah.
it's just, okay, this is how you use it and this is what it's going to do. You go in and you ask it things or whatever. Like you go to Google, we take for granted. Like if we have a question or if we need something or we want to do research, when I was a kid, we had an encyclopedia or we had to
Yeah.
go to the library.
Yeah,
Now
me
you go
too.
to Google and you
Yeah.
type something in and it spits out an answer and it gives you all of this data. Well, the next iteration of that is companies being able to take these technical advancements in artificial intelligence and apply it to the business purpose of what it is that they do. It's just a matter of saying, okay, let me just adopt it and jump in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it will become so pervasive and also so subtle that people won't kind of react the way they're reacting now. It's just that it's novel, so it's conspicuous. But it'll be like electricity. It'll be powering everything we do. We don't you don't turn on your computer or use your coffee pot in the morning and be like, oh wow, I'm using electricity. No one thinks like that.
That's it, my point.
But it will be like that pretty soon. I think by the end of next year, every computer that's produced and that you use, every laptop, every desktop, every iPad, everything that's out there in the world will be an AI powered machine. Every single piece of software that is developed will be AI enabled. It won't say AI on it, but it will be
Right.
AI, kind of facilitated, if you will. Just because to not use AI in the production or support or facilitation of it would almost kind of hurt it in the market and also hurt its output. So to do it would be a disservice to the user.
Yeah, it's so interesting, guys. So I'm gonna take a quick pause and just I saw Matt speak recently, like last year, about AI, and I was so blown away at his presentation that I wasn't sure whether to be really excited about the future or completely terrified. So I guess we're here and it's happening and we just should just embrace it and enjoy the ride. Any final words of wisdom?
I would definitely not be completely terrified at all when I gave that impression when I spoke. I don't know which talk you're referencing, but I definitely did not want to come across that way at all. I am a huge proponent of this emerging artificial intelligence for good movement, which is on the lips of many people that do what I do for a living. And I am a firm believer that by introducing augmented intelligence, the idea of AI and humans working together, that there are a lot of really kind of traditional problems that humans face, that people have faced for many years, that can hopefully be solved once and for all, that have gone unsolved for a long time. And for me, the biggest problem that continues to be unsolved is the issue of mental health globally. But
Yeah.
other people have other big problems that they're looking to solve with AI, like things like climate change and wealth inequity and poverty. And there are a lot of other big challenges that exist that hopefully with AI that we can work together to solve. And I think that those days are soon upon us. And with the evolutions in AI in our space and with the evolutions in AI broadly, the future is bright. I'm not at all worried about the future. I'm extremely excited by it.
Me too. I was just trying to get a laugh, but
I don't want
Matt,
anyone coming away thinking that robots are kind of walking down
no,
our
well, I
streets
think a
and
lot of people think that. We all saw the movie I, Robot, and
yes, that's
you
exactly what I'm
see these
thinking about.
things, right? Matt, thank you as always. You never disappoint. I always learn something when I talk to you. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Tom. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Okay, guys, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the show. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe so that you don't miss an episode in the future. And feel free to leave a rating or a review or a comment. Thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you soon.